The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
This is Gerard with episode number 15 of Florida's Fresh Mix on the Florida Podcast Network, a random mix of Florida's freshest personalities. This episode is brought to you by our equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. Listen in.
Hello there, this is Amber, the production assistant for the Florida Podcast Network, and as always, I am here with your host, Gerard.
Hello.
Hello. Happy Fresh Mix Friday. For today's show, we have a very special guest who is going to discuss some very important philanthropic work going on in Palm Beach County. Patrick McNamara is the president and CEO of the Palm Health Foundation, and that's a nonprofit organization all about helping Palm Beach County residents have the opportunities to reach their full health potential. In the interview, you'll hear a bit about how the Palm Health Foundation came to be the Palm Health Foundation. It's a really interesting story. Also, Patrick's backstory has quite a bit of tragedy that led him to find this line of work and dedicate his life to philanthropic endeavors, specifically in the healthcare field and in the communities that he serves.
I think that one of the interesting things is Patrick's origin story. I mean, I think it's one thing to see on paper, okay, he's the CEO of a reputable foundation with a huge endowment, and then to find out, the backstory behind the trigger for him to set him down this path. It is tragic, as you mentioned, and we let him explain it in his own words. But there's some good that's come out of that tragedy.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the work that the foundation does itself has to do with tragedy in, the healthcare system as a whole and, socioeconomical statuses and how that affects your healthcare. You guys touched on a lot of those types of topics in this conversation, so it's a pretty heavy one.
That's right. I mean, the United States is pretty unique, and it's been pretty unique in its approach to healthcare from the beginning, as far as it being a for-profit type of institution, and so it creates a lot of enigmatic issues and challenges, and we stand out in that way. And part of what the foundation is trying to do is kind of steer away from our traditional view of healthcare is like, hey, make sure you go to the doctor, get your checkup, and do what your doctor says, right? But this is coming at it from a outside the clinical sphere and more towards focusing on preventative healthcare measures.
Like you said, healthcare generally is thought of as go to the doctor, take your medicines, keep yourself healthy. But what if you don't have access to those things?
Right.
And one thing that actually Patrick and I spoke about in the pre-interview, I brought up to him. I went to school in West Palm, in downtown West Palm, and which is very close to Palm Beach, which is known as the island over there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's like where the very rich, like 1%ers live. And I told him that, it's interesting, the dynamic of West Palm, you have those 1%ers a bridge away from the rest of the, 99.
Right.
And it's literally a bridge away, in the other side of the Dixie train tracks, it's a whole nother world. And it's really great to know that there's a foundation like the Palm Health Foundation that is looking out for the 99 in a community that is so close to that 1%. I feel strange having to move on to the sponsor shout out right now and try to sound out peppy.
It's a serious topic. You'll see in the interview, I have a pretty somber tone in the interview. We have a pretty somber tone now. So it's a serious topic. But I always get excited when I hear about our sponsor. Let her rip.
Yep. Okay. Mainline Marketing. Here you go. Your time to shine. Thank you for being our equipment sponsor and for hooking us up with the Shure MV7 microphones. I love how I sound. Is that narcissistic of me? Like, I love how I sound.
I love how we sound too. It's great. My voice, I can hear it, and it's crystal clear. I would recommend it to anybody.
I wish I could walk around the Shure MV7 mic and just talk like this, and this is how people could always hear my voice. They plug in their headphones and they just hear the crispness. Please go out and get the Shure MV7 mic. It's perfect for podcasting, and we love it. We know you guys are going to love it. Now to go back to the somber tones, we're going to go ahead and play Gerard's interview with the CEO and president of the Palm Health Foundation, Patrick McNamara.
Hello, Patrick. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Gerard. How about you?
Today, I get to do what I love, which is to do a podcast and be here with you on the mic. I just want to kind of get started with how we got here. You work with the Palm Health Foundation. Can you quickly let our audience know what particular role you have there? And it's located in Palm Beach, Florida. So that's our Florida connection. What exactly is your role there?
So I'm the president and CEO of Palm Health Foundation. We have been around since 2001. We are what's referred to in philanthropy as a health conversion foundation. There are now over 300 health conversion foundations throughout the country. And this was a trend that started back in the 80s and mostly exploded in the 90s. And it was when basically you had for-profit larger groups buying up community hospitals. And that's how we were created. So when Good Samaritan Hospital up here and St. Mary's Hospital were sold to Tenet, basically the assets of that nonprofit have to stay in the community for the good of the community. And that's how we were created, out of the assets from what were the Good Samaritan Foundation and the St. Mary's Foundation.
So if a layperson were to ask you what a health conversion foundation is, how would you respond?
So we exist to improve the health of the community. Each health conversion foundation has its own ability to come up with its mission and how it uses its funds, but we basically are a grant maker. We have now a little bit over $100 million in assets, and so we've got a nice endowment.
So you just talked about the size of your endowment, which is great for a nonprofit that does really good work, good community work, and is run competently and with the right mission. And it sounds like, I've done my diligence on you all, and it's very, very heartening. And so it's also a lot of responsibility. And you're the CEO. What I've learned about your background is these type of things don't happen by accident, and they don't happen overnight. I will say there is some sensitivity, I would imagine, as to, your life story and how your life journey brought you to where you are now. But I don't think that I am best suited to describe that. And I want to give you the respect to share what you feel comfortable with sharing. I mean, I know that you openly admit that you were raised in a well-to-do family. Your parents had a lot of brothers and sisters. While your upbringing might have looked idyllic on paper or from the outside, you did have certain life experiences that brought you to where you are now. To the extent you want to share, I just think it's important for our audience to know that things don't happen in a vacuum, and how people's experiences define them.
I appreciate that opportunity, Gerard, to share that. And yeah, I am perfectly happy to tell my story. It's something that I feel like I almost have a responsibility to do, given my journey and what it means for the work that we do at Palm Health Foundation. So I'll give you the short version. This is, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm one of 7 kids. My father, I remember asking him, hey, Dad, when I was growing up, he was an attorney, said, so what kind of investments do you have? This is back when I was in high school. And he said, well, I've got 7 of them. Of course, he was referring to us.
I got it.
Yeah. So like not to go too much into my father and how we were, upper middle class, I would say, is a good way of putting it, in New Orleans. My father was a very respected attorney at a large law firm. He did not ever drive any kind of flashy stuff, and we were not brought up in an ostentatious way. But in our family, we actually had a write-up in the Times-Picayune, which was the major paper at the time. I remember when I was probably in middle school, and it was basically a spread about our family in the local section, and just about a lawyer's big family and how great life was. And that was all true. Things changed in my high school years. So my siblings started to have some issues with mental illness, and namely depression, anxiety, eating disorders. It was like a hurricane coming into our family, seemingly out of nowhere. And then,
and where do you fall in the pecking order amongst your many brothers?
I am the middle child. I am number 4.
Very interesting.
So, okay. Yeah. So, and these were my younger siblings and my older brother. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, we were very close. And I followed in his footsteps actually to Georgetown University for college, where my oldest brother had graduated. And I joined my brother Michael there in 1988. And in 1989, Michael had been struggling with depression for the past 2 to 3 years, deep depression, and he took his life when we were both at Georgetown. So that was like a bomb going off in our family on top of everything else. And so basically that was a major fork in the road for me in terms of my experiences where I was going. I was actually a government major back at the time and planning to go to law school. And I changed my major to psychology after that, and then wound up going to get my master's in social work. So, and where that's made such a deep impression on me is I've always been struck by the fact that we had resources in our family to deal with these issues. And the silver lining in all of this is that this was 30 years ago, and myself and all my siblings are doing great. We all have families of our own, successful careers, and are happy. And so there are so many people in our country who can't say the same. And particularly when it comes to our understanding of mental health and how we approach it, that we just have a ways to go. And particularly understanding that those folks who don't have resources, we need to continue to do better than we have in the past. One of the things that I've been most excited about, and I'm not a physician, I'm a licensed clinical social worker, but I've spent my professional career in the behavioral health arena and community development. And in the area of brain science and our understanding of the brain, literally up until the late 90s, we have punted in terms of the biological understanding of what's going on in that part of the body, because it's so difficult to get to a better understanding of it. But that is really changing. In the past 30 years, it just so happens during the same time in my professional career, we've had an explosion of understanding, research, and improved science and understanding how the brain works. That's where it's kind of the final frontier, if you will, when it comes to medical understanding in the body. And to me, and without getting too esoteric about this, the brain is the sort of seat of human dignity. And right now, we just have a very still, as far as like pharmaceuticals and the genetic predispositions, we were only scratching the surface on those things. And I am a big believer in pushing the boundaries of continuing to deepen our understanding in brain science, and how that then translates to improving care. And that's including, preventative measures and even focusing on things like mental wellness, and rather than what's gone wrong, what is going right and how can we do more of that?
On your website, and you talk about your work, and it's in 3 different categories: building a culture of health, which I see is kind of more broad-based. Secondly, advancing brain health, which you're referring to, and strengthening the health professions. So let's first talk about, we were just talking about the brain health. So what specific deeds and approaches is Palm Health Foundation engaged in?
Yeah, we're engaged in some really exciting things in that arena. when I first came to the foundation, behavioral health had always been a focus of the foundation, but we had gone about it in a really very traditional, conservative way, and limited way, where, for instance, we wouldn't do anything with addiction or substance abuse. And so when I came to Palm Health Foundation, which is over 4 years ago, the board was generous in giving me latitude for reframing how we approach behavioral health under this banner of brain health. And that was in many ways inspired by these amazing assets that we have in Palm Beach County, and in South Florida in general, but in particular, the Scripps Institute and the Max Planck Neuroscience Institute, where also at the same time, Florida Atlantic University opened their a brain institute on the same campus. And so Scripps and Max Planck are literally two of the world's top innovative life sciences groups, and saw all the makings for developing a significant hub here for advancing brain health and brain science. And so we've worked a lot with the folks from Florida Atlantic University and a guy by the name of Dr. Randy Blakely. He's a molecular neuroscientist. He developed the National Institute for Mental Health Center for the Brain at Vanderbilt. And having developed a friendship with him, and we're going to be announcing a large gift coming up that the foundation is making to support the work of the Brain Institute. And that's where I get really excited, knowing that and one of the things we're supporting is what's referred to as computational neuroscience. So that's a mouthful, and it can get really nerdy, and folks' eyes will gloss over real quick. It is where the state of the exploration, deepening knowledge is, and using things like artificial intelligence for understanding better the neural circuitry of the brain, and modeling and the interactions between the brain and the environment in individuals, and how that gets represented in the computer modeling. So one of the things that I'm really looking at, and this is a bit of a longer horizon, but how to really bridge that science hub for the brain to community benefit and improving care. And that's over the next many years. That's our brain health initiative. We're looking to connect those dots and strengthen the relationship between those three things, and just a whole bunch of different ways that we're looking at doing that.
Right. And so, it seems that you're doing multiple things at once. So you're creating these partnerships to focus specifically on, to collect data on brain function, et cetera, and focusing on that specific part of the body, as you call the seat of human dignity, which I love. And I'm stealing that, by the way. But then also you have this broader based mission to build a culture of health. And I'm going to tell you why I liked when I saw that. My interpretation of that might not be what you meant by it, and I can't wait to hear what was meant by it. But sure. It reminded me of when I think building a culture of health, I think about what's the opposite of that. The opposite of is thinking about health as something you have to strive for, or seek out, or take time out of your day to do, to affirmatively do, as opposed to being have it become rote. And so there's a difference between getting healthcare when something goes wrong and living a healthy lifestyle and being immersed in a healthy lifestyle, or even knowing what a healthy lifestyle looks like. When I saw you're building a culture of health, it reminded me of that. So what's intended by that kind of overarching tenet?
Well, you just explained it beautifully, Gerard. So that really is it. Just to take a step back for a minute, and there's been, especially in the time of the pandemic, we're seeing how our healthcare system fraught and overtaxed, and we've got some of the best clinical care in the world here in the States. And yet we have some of, not the worst, but really poor outcomes at a national level in our population overall compared to other developed countries. And so, healthcare reform is a huge open question mark, in my opinion, and all that's come along with the Affordable Care Act and those attempts at a political level to make headway on this. Mm-hmm. The bottom line for me is we have learned that clinical care, and this is the best clinical care in the world, accounts for no more than 20% of positive health outcomes. But yet we invest probably over 99% in clinical care. Okay, so what's responsible for the other 80%, or more of positive health outcomes? And that has everything to do with the culture of health. Right. That includes socioeconomic conditions in particular neighborhoods. Like, I don't know if you've heard the phrase, but it's become a fact that your zip code is a better determinant of your health outcomes than your genetic code.
Yes, I have heard that. And the statistics that you just dropped are amazing and very eye-opening. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we get it, that we're rowing against the tide in many ways, because there's so much built into how we approach health. Our name for the foundation had been Palm Healthcare Foundation, and we changed it since I've been there to Palm Health Foundation, because health has really become synonymous with healthcare. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with quality, exceptional healthcare. We need it, absolutely. So not taking anything away from clinical care and the need to continue to have the best clinical care. That said, there's not nearly enough focus, in our opinion, and leverage of resources for promoting more upstream activities in prevention, early intervention. And, going back to, as we were discussing about brain health and brain science, behavioral health is the same way. When we think about behavioral health, we think about going to see a psychiatrist or a therapist or, the professionals in clinical care. But we don't focus nearly enough, in my opinion, on the more preventative aspects and the upstream aspects of mental wellness, that basically there are things that all of us can do to take better care of our brains and the development of brains in children. And as we get older, all of those different things. And so that does have more to do with healthy behaviors and lifestyle and context, not only socioeconomic conditions, but, all the things that go into healthy behaviors in that particular context. And then there's genetics and environment. So all of those different things account for the rest of that 80% of positive health outcomes.
I think this is a perfect segue into these stories of impact. This seems like a unique, innovative way to put faces and voices to the actual community impact of your mission to create this culture of health. So can you tell me how Stories of Impact came about? How does it work and how does it help?
The stories of impact, why that's so important, goes back to this idea about the assumptions that we make. And we have a tool called assumptions versus knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so it brings to light how often we make assumptions when we're funding something, and why do we have reason to believe that? And so how do we convert it where possible into knowledge? And so stories really help us to do that. It was like an epiphany for me. I kept hearing this phrase at all these different conferences and things that I was going to. Nothing about me without me was one way of putting it. Another one was whatever you do for me without me, you do to me. And wow. I just thought in my career, I've gotten pretty good, and this is going back several years ago, I've gotten pretty good at designing programs to do things to people, and they always fall short. Why is that? So this idea of participation and collective sense-making and moving beyond assuming that we know, that to me spurs on the need to get better at listening, first of all, and beyond what we think we know, and those assumptions, and collecting stories for sense making, and active participation, meaningful community engagement in these activities. And rather than people just being conditioned for what have you done to me or for me, how are they able to participate meaningfully in changing those conditions in their particular area? And that's where the power of stories and making impact really rings true. So we've got just a whole slew of folks who are residents, never considered themselves to be leaders, but in their neighborhoods, in their areas, they really are just exercising tremendous leadership for changing those conditions. And it's through collecting stories and kind of where is the energy in this particular area for what's the next, as we refer to it, the next adjacent possible. What's the next best step for heading in a positive direction? And how do we cultivate more stories like this and less stories like that?
So how do you all go about collecting this data, these stories, et cetera, from the community? In other words, if I'm a member of your community, how am I getting my voice to you?
So there's a process called SenseMaker. It's a software, actually. And so one of our staff members has developed a deep capacity for using SenseMaker and navigating complexity. One of our biggest initiatives is something called Healthier Together, where we have focused over many years in 6 communities in Palm Beach County. And we made a commitment to invest $1 million in each of those 6 communities over a 5-year period. Most of those communities, we're now going beyond the 5 years, but we're continuing to invest in them. And so you can think of it in, like, say, for instance, Healthier Delray Beach, which is one of the areas. We have just a sort of super organizers. We refer to them as project directors, all about building relationships, trust with both municipal folks and residents in particular neighborhoods, and in each of their communities really get the word out best. And having developed that sense of trust in these different areas, it's through that sort of informal grapevine, if you will, but also connecting that to some of our more formal communications aspects through the foundation.
I highly suggest to anyone, if you want to find out more about Palm Health Foundation, we're going to include a link to your website, and we'll close with all your information. But check out the Stories of Impact section. And if you want to see real life examples of the work that this organization does, I suggest just thumbing through it and reading some of these things. It's very illuminating, heartwarming, and it gives you a good sense of the real world impact of your approach. Do you have any events or anything else coming up that you wanted to promote while you're here with me on the mic?
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. Every year we do a Train the Brain campaign throughout the month of October. And this year, we're going to be collecting stories from residents, and anybody can submit a story. So we'll have those prompts and links on our website. And we have 2 events with guest speakers that are going to be featured. They're going to be 100% virtual. We're super excited. We're a finalist for what's called the Culture of Health Prize from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for Palm Beach County.
Congratulations.
And thank you. We're excited to find out come October 26th if we have. And you might already know this, but Miami-Dade County won the Culture of Health Prize probably 10 years ago. Broward County won it, I think like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so we're looking to join the South Florida crew, if you will, in promoting a culture of health and being recognized for it.
Is that a Florida thing or?
That's a national thing.
Wow.
So
Okay.
the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is the biggest health foundation in the world, as far as I know. They're huge. And this is one of the things they do annually is basically it's an open competition for regions to apply for the prize. And it doesn't come with a lot of money, but it comes with a lot of national exposure and lifting up of the work that you're doing in order to win the prize. Mm-hmm. So it's stiff competition, but we're fingers crossed. We're hopeful.
Good luck. I'll be looking out on the 26th to see how you guys did. Why don't you give us your website and let us know anywhere else that we could follow you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. It's palmhealthfoundation.org. And another website I'd like for folks to be able to check out is called phfshares.org, as in Palm Health Foundation shares.org. And that's where you will be able to go through any of the stories that we've collected. If you want to follow us on social media, like us on Facebook, Twitter, all of the usual suspects, Instagram, just go to Palm Health Foundation.
Sounds great. And before I let you go, I just wanted to express to you and my audience that I've had somewhat of a somber tone during this interview, but it's a serious topic, and these are serious times, and there's a light being shown on so much of this at the moment and throughout the past year and a half. This interview will definitely be marinating with me for the next couple of hours at least. So I really appreciate it. Look, thank you so much, Patrick. I really appreciate your time with us, and you've given us much to think about, but also you've given us the number one thing that I think everyone should take from this interview, which is hope. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerard. It's been a real pleasure.
What an insightful interview with Patrick McNamara. I really was left thinking a lot about one thing that he said in particular about how clinical care accounts for no more than 20% of positive healthcare outcomes. And that's really what we think about when we think about health. And he mentioned that we spend over 99% of our healthcare costs on clinical care, whereas the remaining 80% we spend almost no time, no focus on, no attention to. I've always believed that we need to increase our focus on preventative care, meaning, what are the things that we can do to create a healthy lifestyle and to form good habits that prevent us from having to go to the emergency room? Or how can we catch things early? How can we make it to lower our risks of the cancers and the Alzheimer's and the things that ail us? But to hear those statistics really put it in clear, kind of scary focus. And, when he was discussing this culture of health and the relationship with socioeconomic status and how your zip code can affect your healthcare opportunities, it really kind of made me sad in a way, because you wish that people could just, decide, hey, I want to live in this community or that one. But so many don't have choices or a plethora of choices based on their socioeconomic status, their income, the opportunities available to them. And with that comes worse health, worse healthcare opportunities. They don't have the opportunity to learn about best health practices. I was really heartened by his focus on the quote unquote upstream aspects of healthy behavior and talking about behavioral health and how to change one's environment. When he was talking about this culture of health and how certain communities face a stark deficit when it comes to building a culture of health and being able to be taught behaviors and of how to live a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. It reminded me in a way of Donald Smith, who's the lifestyle director at Arden, the community in, I think it was Wellington, in episode 11. So as soon as they step out their door, they're living a healthy lifestyle. And that's preventative. They're preventing healthcare complications, potentially, theoretically, down the road by living healthy every day. And that is, I think, such a worthwhile endeavor. And I'm so glad we have organizations like the Palm Health Foundation that really not only goes into the communities and teaches these tools for living a healthier lifestyle, but also getting feedback from the community that they put on their website and getting that feedback on how these tools have real life impact. And perhaps through reading these stories, other people can become inspired to do the same. And also their separate mission with respect to brain health is also very admirable. It just really put into perspective how much we need to think about what can we do early on, what can we do day to day to make ourselves live longer, happier lives. And that is G's Fresh Take. Thank you so much for listening in, and I look forward to being with you in the next episode of the Fresh Mix Podcast. For details and show notes about today's show and our guests, go to freshmixpodcast.com. I'd really love your feedback, both on today's guest and on my Fresh Take. The Florida Podcast Network has a closed Facebook group exclusively for super fans of their shows like Florida's Fresh Mix. So we all look forward to hanging out in there with you. Just search for FPN Insiders on Facebook to leave us comments, get early scoops, contests, and other special treats, or just to complain about Florida, like, for instance, that weather forecasts mean nothing in Florida. You ever thought that you were going to have a sunny day? Oh, no. You can get a random rainstorm. It could be sunny as heck, and then the next second, it's a downpour. And then, guess what? It's going to stop raining in 5 minutes, and then the sun's going to come out again. You know, in Haiti, there's a saying, when the sun is out and there's not a cloud in the sky, and it's still pouring rain, that the devil's beating his wife. Well, get ready for a lot of double wife beating in Florida, okay? So, anyway. Thank you, as always, to our equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing, and be sure to visit all the great shows in the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Keep catching Who's Fresh in the Florida Mix with Florida's Fresh Mix Podcast.